Good morning. I'm coming to you live from the Sinai Peninsula. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sitting in my office, but thanks to movie magic and a few photos from Byrd, we can be anywhere in the world. This is from the Sinai Peninsula, where one of the most famous biblical stories took place. You have this saga of Moses and what's called the Exodus from Egypt. I want to challenge you over the next few days to read the first 3 chapters of the book of Exodus and let the story come to life. We will see that if you read closely, you may notice some things that maybe you didn't notice before. Our current circumstances are drawing us into these biblical stories in ways that we might never have noticed before. And so if you look at the 3rd chapter of Moses, this picks up kind of in the middle of things. Moses has been born into, you remember, it's a chaotic time and place. There was this fear from the Pharaoh that the people, the children of Israel who were enslaved, would rise up and become too strong. So he's trying to limit that, and so he orders the killing of small children, especially the boys. And so you get the story of Moses' mother placing him in a basket, placing him in the Nile, saving his life and giving him a special entrance into this world that's beyond them. He gets raised as one of Pharaoh's own when Pharaoh's daughter finds him in the basket. And then you get this identity crisis where when he realizes who he is and he sees how the Hebrew people are being treated in that time, anger wells up in him, this sort of righteous indignation giving way to outright rage, and he murders an Egyptian and has to flee for his life. Now we know that part of the story, and chapter 3 picks up, and he is a shepherd, and we kind of glorify that in our time. We talk about Jesus being the good shepherd. We hear David is a shepherd. There's this shepherd imagery throughout the Bible, and so it's kind of romanticized and glorified. But really, that's a low-class kind of job. I mean, that's kind of at the bottom of society. If you're just taking care of the animals, you probably don't even own them. They belong to someone else. It's just your day job. And more than that, you have to stay there pretty much the whole time, day and night, with the flock to take care of them from any wild animals that might attack them or people that might come and try to steal them. So it's a thankless job. It doesn't pay well. So when we enter into this story in chapter 3, Moses has lost everything. He is a nobody at this point. He is wanted. He's hunted by Egypt. There would be wanted posters out for his arrest if it were happening today. This is not a glorious time for him. It's good that he's, found a job, he's found a place, but he is hit rock bottom at this point in his life. And into that moment, that rock bottom pit of despair, God shows up. So let's read from chapter 3. Moses was shepherding the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. He led the flock to the west end of the wilderness and came to the mountain of God, Horeb. The angel of God appeared to him in flames of fire blazing out of the middle of a bush. He looked. The bush was blazing away, but it didn't burn up. Moses said, "What is going on here? I can't believe this. Amazing. Why doesn't the bush burn up?" God saw that he had stopped to look. God called to him from out of the bush, Moses, Moses. He said, yes, I'm right here. God said, don't come any closer. Remove your sandals from your feet. You're standing on holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Moses hid his face, afraid to look at God. God said, I've taken a good, long look at the affliction of my people in Egypt. I've heard their cries for deliverance from their slave masters. I know all about their pain. And now I have come down to help them, to pry them loose from the grip of Egypt, to get them out of that country and bring them to a good land with wide open spaces, a land lush with milk and honey, the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite. The Israelite cry for help has come to me, and I've seen for myself how cruelly they're being treated by the Egyptians. It's time for you to go back. I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the people of Israel, out of Egypt. Moses answered God, but why me? What makes you think that I could ever go to Pharaoh and lead the children of Israel out of Egypt? I'll be with you, God said. And this will be the proof that I am the one who sent you. When you have brought my people out of Egypt, you will worship God right here in this very mountain. Then Moses said to God, suppose I go to the people of Israel and I tell them, the God of your fathers sent me to you, and they asked me, what is his name? What do I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. Tell the people of Israel, I am sent me to you. God continued with Moses, this is what you're to say to the Israelites. God, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob sent me to you. This has always been my name, and this is how I will always be known. Now notice in this story that Moses saw this bush and he turned aside, and it's not until God saw that he had stopped to look that God calls out to Moses. I think God is calling all of us, and we just have to take time to stop and to look, to hear that call, to know that call. We don't get this burning bush experience, but we do have our experience, and our heart beats, our heart breaks when we notice certain things in the world, when we notice the suffering of others. That is God calling to us to do something about it. Yes, we are being sent just like Moses, and we are asking, why me? Well, it's because we noticed that something was wrong. And that's why God is calling us to do something about it. And we have this assurance, just like Moses, that God will be with us when we take that step. You know, this burning bush moment, these mountaintop experiences. Throughout the Bible, it seems like mountains are a big deal. You've got this story with Moses. You have Noah landing on a mountain after the flood. You have Elijah with this mountaintop experience of challenging the god Baal, or Baal, as it's pronounced in the older language, where Elijah calls down fire from heaven in this dramatic display of God's power and God's presence. You have mountaintops with Jesus. You have the Sermon on the Mount. You have this scene where Jesus is headed toward Jerusalem in Luke, I think chapter 19, and he goes up on the Mount of Olives, and he looks out over the city, and he weeps for the city. God notices our suffering. God weeps with us. There are these mountaintop experiences. You have the Transfiguration, which takes place on a mountain. You have the Crucifixion, which takes place on a mountain. The Mount of Olives is also considered the site where Jesus is called up into heaven after the resurrection. There is something peculiar about a mountaintop. We call these exciting, dramatic displays. There's a word for it, a fancy word called a theophany, a place where God shows up. God is revealed in a mighty, mighty way. And those come, it seems, by surprise to the ones who are there. Definitely Moses, I don't know as he was looking for something like this, but I can imagine he's waiting on God to show up in some way. This is the lowest point of his life, and God does show up there. I think we have to be willing to show up ourselves in order for that divine moment to happen. If you're like me, my journey of faith began in one of those mountaintop experiences where I felt at rock bottom. The gospel was very much one of fear. When I was growing up, do you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that if you closed your eyes in death today, would you spend eternity in heaven or in the fires of hell? I was scared to death when I heard that message, and very dramatically I walked down the aisle to the front of the church. There were people there like Emily Tanner's grandfather. I remember praying very loudly as I'm on my knees, asking God for forgiveness and salvation. For me, it was dramatic. In that moment, I'm scared to death, and I'm praying, and everyone's around me praying for me and with me, and fear went away. That was salvation for me. There was this moment where I wasn't afraid anymore, and I believed that God was with me, just like Moses in this moment. So what can we take away from this story? God is with us. I think we have to remind ourselves of that. We have to walk out into the unknown, on the edge of what we know. We have to leave behind what's comfortable, what's normal. We have to seek God, and then we will find that God is calling us, and God is equipping us to be God's agents of change in the world, to make this a better place. God is calling us just like God called Moses, and God is with us. And who is this God? Well, this name, I am who I am, in Hebrew, Hayava Haya. We get the name for God that's used in the Old Testament. It was so holy. Remember the Ten Commandments, you shall not take the name of your Lord God in vain. You couldn't say it. So we're not exactly sure of the pronunciation because people didn't say it. Some scribes, as they were transcribing the scriptures, if they would come to the name of God, they would have to take a ritual cleansing every time before they would write it. They would make sure they were clean before they would even write the name of God. So we're not exactly sure how to say it, but the closest we think is something like Yahweh or Yahweh, and it's said to mimic the sound of breathing, Yahweh, Yahweh. something like that. But that God is life, that God is being itself. God is. I am. There's something powerful in the name of God itself, but we know because we have breath. This goes back to Genesis, when God forms humanity out of the clay and breathes life into it, and it becomes a nephesh, a soul, an entire being, life and breath infused into this dirt. That's us. It's built into us. Every time we breathe, we are breathing in God. It's always there. We have to take notice of that. And so if you haven't yet today done so, take a moment to breathe and be alive, be in the presence of God. I want you to try something. You can pause the video in a minute. I want you to breathe in the name of God. I want you to breathe out something that you need, your greatest need right now. So pick a name of God. You can say, God of all creation, and think that to yourself as you're breathing in. And then breathe out. Have mercy on me. Or, Lord Jesus, breathe in. Give me peace. Breathe out. Some name of God, breathe in. Something that you need, breathe out. And do that for a minute or two. And then you will be in the presence of God wherever you are. Just by being, you are close to God, if you are aware of that. We might not get this burning bush moment, but if we're careful, if we pay attention, we might notice that God is with us, that we can breathe deep the presence of God, that we can go with confidence into that next unknown thing that gives us some anxiety right now, knowing that God is walking with us. Go with God, my friends.